students. We have a very special session today because we're going to talk about how to fulfill your dreams if your dream is getting into a graduate program or a doctoral program. And we have two of my favorite colleagues here today, Ken Robley and Patricia Harris, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them before we turn the session over to them and hear about their wisdom. So Ken Robley is the chair of the mathematics department, and Dr. Robley is also a professor of mathematics. He's been with us at Troy since 2002, and we hope to keep him forever. In addition to teaching primarily mathematics major classes, he enjoys working with students on research projects and providing opportunities for students in presenting research, such as organizing the Troy Math Fest departmental seminar and opportunities at national conferences. His research interests, and including the research he does with his students, lie in the area of graph theory. Think about dots and lines, including graph labelings, edge regular graphs, and combinatorial designs. He's so smart, I can't even say those words. Okay, so I have to tell you a little bit something about Ken and why he was asked to present today. I happen to be in the mathematics E-Quad, which is their advising area for the math students. And I noticed that somebody had built this amazing career section for the math students about how to get into doctoral programs and graduate programs. And I said, I got to figure out who did this, because this shouldn't be just the math students doing it. Every student at Troy should know this information. Who do y'all think it turned out to be? Dr. Ken Robley, and that's why he was courteously extended an invitation, no arm twisting, to come today. Our other wonderful presenter is Patricia Harris, who's the coordinator of the Learning Center at Troy University. She is a former tenured English professor specializing in rhetoric and composition, which is why she's a superstar at the Writing Center. The role of belonging in academic identity construction and subject formation in virtual environments, such as the one we're using today. Her current research areas include Learning Center belonging and academic identity construction, Minecraft for mathematics. I know a lot of people just perked up there, as a builder and a researcher, and the role of UDL, implicit bias, and design thinking in tutoring practice. And she's a participant in a current University of Florida design thinking in Writing Center study. Now, you may wonder, how did Trish get her invitation today? Patricia Harris is not only superwoman, but she has gotten more people into doctoral programs fully funded than probably anybody else I know at Troy University. So we do have the superstars here to talk to you today. We're glad that you're here. And now I'm going to hush up, mute myself, and turn it over to Trish and Ken. Take it away.
Wonderful. So let me thank you so much for inviting us. It's such an honor to be here and speak with all of you today. And I'm so excited to share the things that we have learned over time with our own practice, getting into grad school and doing well, but also in helping countless students do the same thing. And so thank you so much, Leora, for the invitation, and to Ken for being my partner in this presentation today. It's wonderful to be here. We're going to talk today about getting into grad school and doctoral programs. And we're going to take a slightly different approach and sort of tag team our presentation, because we created it in tandem. And so we want to make sure that we are covering we have a flow to the topics we want to cover, and we want to make sure that we're covering the topics in full based on both of our knowledges as we move forward. And we're going to ask some questions as we go. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll stop at certain moments as we go and try to answer your questions in chat. So thank you so much. And so, yeah, we start with questions and issues, and this is Ken.
Hey, so thanks everybody for being here today. This is a nice opportunity, and I hope that it helps. And please let us know if you have any questions on this. Some of the issues that we explore here are some of the basic ones are like, why would you even consider graduate school? How do you pay for that? That's obviously a big deal. And then, choosing one, and then the whole application process as well, and then requirements. And then especially once you get into the a graduate program, whether it be a master's or a PhD, Like some things you might could, some considerations that you might have, like in, like not only the requirements, but then like if you get to a master's thesis or a PhD dissertation point, then, how do you go about choosing an advisor for that? And then also finally meeting the requirements for some of that. Now, some of these I will admit um, might be a little bit more in my area of mathematics,
Mhm.
but I think that some of these considerations are more general as well. So I tried to make it more general, and I'm sure that there
Mhm.
are some variances between different disciplines and all the opportunities, the timelines, the process, and everything. So, but I think some of these might be universal as well, though.
Yes.
So, Trish.
Okay, so the first is, we think, why do you even want to go to graduate school? We talked about a little of this before we got started today. Um, Sometimes people go to grad school for emotional or competition or peer pressure reasons, but excuse me, but one of the biggest reasons that people tend to go to grad school is because they have expanded options once they graduate. You can teach with an undergraduate degree in education, but if you want to teach at the college level and sometimes even to be promoted as a K through 12 teacher these days, you need a graduate degree. And so, you can teach, if you're somebody who just loves to research, put me in a lab alone and I'm the happy person. And some days that's me also. Um, if you want to do that, people want to know that you've been trained to conduct that research. And so graduate school can prepare you for that and give you the credentials to let you do that. Some people work in industry, and even in Troy, we have a recycling a plant that's really a chemist's dream, right, Ken? It's
Right.
they're hiring, you know, um, people with graduate degrees in chemistry who understand the composition of these materials so that they can, and they're like the most amazing plant of that type, I think, in the country. And excuse me, but if you want to work in industry, you need to have typically a graduate degree. I've lived in Corning, New York, where Corning Incorporated is. I've lived in Midland, Michigan, where Dow Chemical is. And let me tell you, everybody who went to my church and everybody in our whole social set, because that's who lives there, were people with PhDs in the sciences. Because in order to work there, does that make sense? They had people who were working on the line, but the people who made the decisions and made the products and did all the thinking were people with graduate degrees in the STEM fields. And also some people who just want to rise in their professions need to get a graduate degree. My own son, who has an undergrad degree in supply chain from Michigan State, is going to Northwestern for his MBA right now because that's the next. He wants to do that before he's 30 because that's how he breaks through in his company, in his industry. That's what you do next, and that's the timeline for it. Does that make sense? So we go to graduate school for a range of reasons, and sometimes it starts with the emotion. Like I've always told myself I'm going to get a PhD one day, or all my peers from my master's program are doing it, or all my sorority sisters already have their master's degree, or whatever it is. That's a starting place to think about it, but you want to really think about the concrete other side of it, and that's why we include this information.
All right. Some basic considerations, you know, why you might want to consider graduate school. I mean, I guess one of the most basic ones, would be just to, increase your knowledge in your area and in your specific area. And while you're here as an undergraduate, you get a well-rounded education. You take general
Mhm.
studies classes. You may have a minor, you have a major or a program that you're in, and you'll have electives. And it's kind of a time to kind of figure out some things that you might really enjoy more. But and then you can explore them further in graduate school. And so you narrow down things to a specific area. Like, for example, myself, I went for a master's degree in mathematics, and I knew that that's what I like. Now, having said that, I was a double major in undergraduate. I was a mathematics and a philosophy major, so it was a debate for me to, with myself, what am I going to do grad school? And I know I love both subjects and all, but nevertheless, I've ultimately kind of narrowed it down, and that's all I took when I was
Mhm.
in grad school were mathematics classes. And then even with once you're there, then you would probably even take more specialized courses, like I don't
Mhm.
know, take your favorite or maybe for some people their least favorite part of math, like geometry. You might pick a
Mhm.
on a or whatever your field is. It doesn't matter. You'll take more specialized classes within that to get a deeper knowledge. Yeah. So,
And so, and I just want to interject before we proceed that, philosophy is really descriptive mathematics, right?
yeah, there's a lot of overlap between the
There's a
two.
lot, there's a lot of overlap. Sorry, we have to also have family conversations here. And yeah, this is the big thing. Everybody sees the ticket prices for graduate school, and people are so afraid of this. So yeah, let's talk about the cost of graduate school and who pays for it.
Yeah. So, like, if for undergraduate, it may be your parents or maybe some combination of your parents, a scholarship, a loan. You may have a full ride here, but typically though in graduate school, at least from my experience, most people are going to have some sort of assistantship to help either pay for graduate school or minimize the cost within graduate school. I mean, still usually there's going to be some cost, and the assistantship, it typically now pays for like a tuition waiver and some sort of stipend a salary that goes along with that as well. And then in certain areas, there may be like tutoring centers as well on the campus that you're at, and you can take advantage of that as well. In fact, that happened for me when I went to graduate school at Auburn University, and not only was I GTA, but there were other opportunities as well, like in a tutoring lab. So that helped too, because
Yeah.
you had, yeah,
And it's a beautiful thing. When I studied for my master's in English at University of Georgia, I had a GTA, and that was really useful. And I was able to teach classroom English. But some of the other people who received graduate assistantships at Georgia at the same time had assistantships that were all tutoring, as you're saying. And so sometimes the tutoring is just sort of an ad hoc thing that you can use to make extra money by the hour in addition to your GTA, but sometimes it's a substitute. So it's a beautiful thing. You can also earn, even straight out of undergrad school, you can earn fellowships that don't require any labor in return. And when I started my doctoral program at Wayne State, I had a fellowship. And so what that means is they pay for your school and they just throw money at you and you don't have to do anything but just go to school, which is
yeah,
great. I'm saying
yeah,
that like, but I couldn't believe it when it happened. But yet those things happen too.
yeah.
So, but you want to think about that. Now, when we talk about this stuff on this slide, that doesn't mean that if you have to pay for your grad school, that's a bad thing. In higher ed, there have been so many budget cuts, and especially right now in our current climate, there's so many cuts to everything. And so programs that might have had, like when I was at Georgia, we had like 102 graduate GTAs, and they might have a reduced number now. Does that make sense? A lot of programs have suffered a lot of cuts in recent years. And so if you end up being the person who is number 103 when they have 102 GTAs, does that make sense? Don't feel bad. When I went to Georgia, half the people who were in the program with me did not have a teaching assistantship. And so it's important to just realize if you have to pay for it, that's still okay because you're taking
Right.
coursework, proving yourself to your faculty. And there were some people who didn't have it for year one, but got it in year two.
That's right. I've heard of some of our recent mathematics graduates. They got accepted to the school that they wanted, but they may have not got an assistantship, and but then it sometimes happens later on that if they stick with it for a year or depending on how long, then they may actually get an assistantship or some kind of opportunity. Sometimes it can be something like it could be a teaching assistantship. Sometimes it could even be maybe even a research assistantship as well. If you connect with a faculty member like that's working on a grant, then they may want a student to work with them.
Right. And again, not to get too Hallmark card or woo-woo right now, but when you're an undergrad, you are just trying to figure out who you are, what you want to major in, and you're trying to get through and get your degree. You have to treat grad school like a job. Wouldn't you agree, Ken? I mean, grad school is really a job. And even if they don't give you a job from the start, your job is to do as well as you can to be the best possible researcher and student that you can. Because if you are offered a package, is what we call it, then it helps you keep your package because it's super competitive. If you didn't get a package, it will help you earn the attention of the people who might be thinking of you next year when somebody washes out and there's another opportunity. Don't you think that's true?
That's exactly right. I have heard of that. They're just kind of, doing their best as while they're there, and then the opportunity, like you said, may a position or some sort of opportunity may open up. You just kind of had to stick with it, and that's one of that's a great trait to have going into graduate school. Just the determination to see things through,
Yeah.
and that's it. And those opportunities, I've seen that happen to several students that they eventually come around.
Yeah. And again, your professors, and especially your major professors, and you'll soon know who you're attracted to in terms of ideas and scholarship, and you'll start shopping for a major professor, right? And usually we know who we want before we enter the program, but sometimes, especially when we're master's students, it's just sort of kind of magical, and you find it in a hallway one day or something, or not really, but almost. Excuse me, but you're proving yourself to them all the time. And one thing that we had happen in the Learning Center this semester, just a quick anecdote about Meet. One of our tutors, Meet Patel, applied to University of Kentucky, and applied, and I guess it was 3 days after the application deadline, he got an email from somebody who was not even on the selection committee, because somebody on the selection committee saw all of the things in his statement and all of the things that he was good at and passionate about, and reached out to the only person in the department who was like a perfect kind of love match on research for him. And she reached out to him. They flew him to Kentucky just to meet with this person and hang out in her lab and do the things. And he ended up with an amazing full ride that's better than some people's jobs. I mean, oh yeah, he got such a sweet situation. But excuse me. So you're doing your very best and not trying to be general about anything. Like, oh, I like everything about math. Oh, I like everything about psychology. No, you like this tiny little interesting prickly thing. Even if it's going to change later, you tell them this is what I'm interested in, because that's the thing that attracts them to you, is that you're somebody who already loves it enough to have a small thing that you love more than the other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that actually happened on a personal note. That happened to me when I was shopping around for grad schools. I specified a certain area of math that I liked, and then once they first started contacting me, then I had some faculty reach out to me and make personal calls, and and like, hey, you like this, then let's talk about it. And and so sometimes you'll find out like kind of quick where that, hey, that's the place I need to go, because this seems like it'd be a good fit. But if you do get an assistantship, and when you start off, then one of the first things that I was doing when I got an assistantship is I had a teaching assistantship was mine, and we had um, kind of a deal where we would we would meet there would be a large lecture class, and then on the other days of the week we would meet in what were called recitation sections. And so we
Mhm.
would meet with smaller groups of the class and kind of take question and answer and discussion type stuff. And
Mhm.
that's when we first started. And then later on, they gave us our own class to teach, and
Yep.
and it would be your class, just like I teach now, except I was a GTA. So, but
Yep.
it was not, it may not have been, you taught one or two classes, and it may not have seemed like the greatest pay at the time, but
Yeah.
in some way it was, is on this it gave us training, and it wasn't maybe as much work as we thought it was at times. As y'all might can see on the slide, it's
Yeah.
12 to 15 hour. I mean, that's a rough guess. It
Mhm.
varies, but if you figure in everything else, the amount of work you're doing plus a tuition waiver and the stipend, and then plus the opportunity that it provides, and
Mhm.
it's really a good deal. And sometimes we had summer teaching opportunities, which was a bonus too. So
Right.
you might want to ask about that if y'all go to grad school. Like what
Yeah.
are are there, what all opportunities are there?
And when you're looking at your potential programs, we'll get to that in just a minute too, but when you're looking at their sites, don't just say, "Oh yeah, I've always wanted to go to Auburn, I'm just going to apply to Auburn." Look at their site, because they'll tell you, you'll be able to look through the faculty pages and see exactly who studies what and which kind of detail. But you'll also be able to click on something that'll be called support, graduate student support, and you'll be able to see what they do. Some schools will also pay for your health insurance, while some don't. They just figure that into the stipend. They'll tell you what the stipend range is if you receive support. At some schools, everyone receives support, and that's wonderful. Like at UT Austin's MFA program, everybody who's accepted to that program gets full support. And so you can look for things like that. And then when you reach out to ask them questions, you'll have much more specific questions. And when we think about this, like 10 to 16,000, I'm just going to talk about we had this year 3 physics graduates in Troy who all got um, full rides to PhD programs at R1 schools. And in every case, I'll talk about the highest ticket one and the lowest ticket one, I guess. But the highest ticket one um, went to Duke. And if you think with Duke, it's 60,000 a year, and that was waived. And then they were paying him 40,000 a year to be a research assistant. That's $100,000 a year job right out of school. Does that make sense? Guaranteed for
Mhm.
6 or 7 years. That's crazy. At the lower end, lower than 100. Sorry to disappoint, but we had somebody who got accepted to University of Florida, and there in physics, it's more than this, because physics is very attractive right now for whatever reason, or we know some of the reasons. So let's say it's almost double this for physics for the stipend, but again, the tuition is waived. And so if it costs 30 a year to go to Florida, and then you get 30 for a stipend, then that's like 60,000 right out of school, and you're getting a free PhD. That's pretty amazing. And then in between, we have somebody who's going to Rice for their PhD in physics, who was a learning center tutor. And so if you came in to see us and somebody helped you with your math, it was probably one of those people. and but when you think about what they're offering you, to Ken's point, you have to think it's only kind of a half-time job, because the other half plus of your job is to go to school and be an excellent scholar and student. And so you're getting 10, 16 or more in your assistantship, but you're also getting a health insurance break most times. You're getting your tuition waived, and that's a lot of money. If you think about what would it be if I had to take out a loan for that money, or I had to ask somebody to write a check, and they're just sort of giving it to you, that's a tremendous gift.
Yep,
So
I
I'm sorry,
agree.
it sounds like we're selling it. We're really
Yeah.
not selling it. It's just like we're true believers. Like we've done it, and so we're like, more people should believe in themselves enough to do it. Um, and so yeah, now we get into how to choose.
Yeah, so you may know, you don't have to have it narrowed down a whole lot when you first start grad school. You may have some basic idea of like what you like within your area. Maybe everybody has likes and dislikes within their coursework as an undergraduate. I did. I'm sure everybody else did too. And just having some kind of general idea of a broad area maybe would be all that you could. I mean, I knew that I liked some parts of math more than the others, and some I
Mhm.
didn't really care for as much. But you can start narrowing that down the further you go.
Right. And you probably already know in your field what you're interested in. Even if you're in nursing, your clinical and theoretical parts are always separated while you're training. And then suddenly you're in a clinical setting and you have to remember all the theoretical stuff. But people who pursue graduate work in nursing can choose to focus on one or the other. Does that make sense? And in physics, you have to think, and am I in theoretical physics or am I going to be working in experimental physics? Two completely different worlds, right? And, I studied as a theory person and not as a teaching person, as an English and writing and media studies person. But then I ended up teaching anyway. But I have like this 50-pound bag of theory that I drag around with me wherever I go. But you already know if you're into doing it or thinking about it, almost every field has that split.
Yep.
And so, yeah, how to choose. This is so important. I chose for all the wrong reasons, but it turned out okay anyway. Do as I say, not as I did.
Yeah, I just you want to think about like taking the GRE. You at least in math and in maybe other areas too that we usually want to take it before we start sending out applications for sure, which typically we may start sending them out either at the first of the year or maybe and it varies a lot depending on the school, but you want to take it at the probably in that fall before the year that you would start if you start in the following fall. But like I said earlier, just invest some time. It'll be worth it if you do have to take an exam, studying for it.
Well, and something that I learned with all of the people who were applying last year and all the 15,000 million letters it feels like I wrote, look at your programs first. Like if you're planning to apply to a school for fall of 21, for instance, start looking at those schools right now. Because, for instance, if you're looking at an MD to PhD program, if you want to be a doctor, but you want to go to a school where there's also a doctoral program, across the country, all those deadlines are October 1st,
Oh wow.
which means it's almost too late to take your MCAT and make that deadline if you might need to retake your MCAT. Does that make sense? So shop for your schools now. I would say if you want to apply for, let's just say fall of 21, that means in March, April, May of 20, that was your sweet spot for investigating your schools. You can still do it now, but that was your sweet spot for investigating your schools. Take your tests in the summer because you might have to take them again. And if you
Yep.
take your GRE general, and for instance, if you have like a lot of English programs require the subject test, physics requires the subject test, and you have to make like a 900 on the subject test to even be viable, you should look at the physics PhD listservs. They're crazy. So at any rate, look at the schools early. Say, what is their deadline? What kind of tests do they require? Some schools don't require GRE anymore. They want other things. Does that
That's
make
right.
sense? And so see, what are my sweet spot schools? Where do I want to go? Where are the people I want to study with who love the tiny little gritty thing that I love? And where are the schools that give me the support that I need? And this is this kind of support. It's not like, love. It's like this instead, right? Excuse me. And then look at what are their deadlines, what are their requirements, et cetera, and then backtrack at least 3 months so you can take the test, start asking for letters, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. But you need to reverse organize your time from that deadline and not assume that it's January 1st for all programs, because it's not. It was January 1st for
Right.
Kentucky, but for Kentucky's MD PhD, it was October 1st. Does that make sense?
Wow.
And so, excuse me, and like for our person who was accepted to University of Chicago and Duke, That was earlier in the fall. And so you have to think, what are my aspirationals? Also, something we tend to think about is we think, I know I can get into school X, so that's where I'm going to apply. Well, I think you never know how you're going to do on the test until you take the test. And if you really kind of do amazingly well on the tests, you're going to be too delicious for your middle school. Does that make sense, that you think you can get into? And sometimes your test can kind of wipe out your undergrad GPA in their eyes because they think, oh, they know these other things. And so you want to make sure that you test as early as possible and prep for it, but also fix yourself high, mid, low schools. Have your absolutely safe school. I know I could just walk in there today and be accepted. Please don't go to that school, but you'll have that on your list, and have your super aspirational school, like this kid who had Duke and University of Chicago and got into both of them. Felt disappointed he didn't get into MIT, but whatever, he got into the other school. So, and then have your middle range schools and apply to all of them. And that way you're shooting for the stars. And so you don't ever have to walk away and think, what if I had applied there? Because it was like easier than I thought where I went. Well, I bet I could have done blah, blah, blah. Well, go ahead and shoot for it while you can. Shoot your shot. And then the school will tell you whether you're a fit for them, because you have to think, when you're applying, they're looking at more than your test scores or your grades. They're also looking at the story you tell about the passion you have for the thing that they're passionate about. And sometimes that's the winning thing. Like in Meat's case at Kentucky, there was no class in what he was doing in his research with mussels and discovering new microorganisms. Does that make sense? It wasn't in his transcript. It wasn't in his test scores. It wasn't even in his letters, but it was in his personal statement when he talked about his passion and all these things he had actually done. That was his ticket. And so, yeah, think about your aspirational schools as well as your safe schools. I think a lot of people sell themselves short, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And
Yep.
you have a question, Patricia,
Yeah,
from Melissa Howard, who's asking, what about
yeah,
situations where the specified field is rather new and not many
yeah.
institutions even offer it yet?
Then then Google is going to be your special friend. And and you're going to have to also do synonym searches. And so the way that you describe it, if you've seen your field described in, if it's brand new and super sexy to people right now, you're going to have to think. And there are two places I would search for this. I would use my search string in quotes in Google, like, what am I calling it? Or I've read somebody who described it in this way, and so I'm going to use that as my search string. Then start doing synonym searches in Google. So change some of the words, excuse me. And so maybe instead of, whatever the rest of the word after bio was in the description, I'm sorry, I don't have chat in front of me while I'm sharing like this. I can't also look at that, but you might want to change that just to biology and then have the other words in your search string or something like that. And so you can find as many possible ways of describing it as you can. And that way you'll see where all the schools are. So you want to look at, part of your search string in Google will be the name or the possible names of that program. And you can use Boolean operators to have like this possibility or this possibility or, this possibility when you're searching. But then you can also, you also want to say doctoral or PhD or something like that in program, and or research or some word like that, some words like that in your string. And that's the way that you're going to find all of that. Now, you have to understand too that especially in STEM right now, in a field like that, all of those people are on Twitter too, sharing their ideas. And there are a lot of people who are sharing ideas, and they're setting up Slacks together, or they're setting up Discord servers together, who are not gamers, but they're using Discord to share research these days. I've been a part of some research groups that use GitHub for sharing research, and nobody in there is a coder. And so they're sharing the information at Twitter. So go to Twitter and use the same search strings that worked for you at Google. And that's where you're going to find your people, is at Twitter. You'll find the programs at Google. You'll find the people at Twitter. And since it is so new and glossy right now, one thing that you can do, this makes it super easy, make sure you have a professional looking Twitter account before you do this, but you can DM them and reach out to them and say, I would love to go into this field, and this blah, 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 blah is my passion. And, I love the things that you post. Do you think that we might, we could create an opportunity to have a Zoom meeting or Skype or something like that, and talk about your research a little bit. I'll tell you that almost all of the people, and we had 10 people get full rides to PhD programs in the Learning Center last year. Almost all of those people reached out directly to somebody exactly like that, got a Skype meeting, and then got into that school.
Oh, wow.
Because relationship matters. You have to put on your rock star cape too. Does that make sense? And have all your ducks in a row that we're talking about here. But relationship plus credentials matters. And that'll just for them, it just put them right to the top of the stack. I hope that answers your question. I'm always going to give too many words in an answer. Sorry.
Yes, she said thank you. That was perfect. Thank you. Rockstar plus credential.
Yeah. Again, Rockstar Cape. And seriously, however things materialize for you, some people can just imagine it, put themselves in that moment or meditate on it. But for some people, actually having something like a cape they bought at Dollar Tree and they put Rockstar, biomedical, blah, blah, blah person on it, seriously, and put it in their room, that it becomes this expression of their aspiration. And I think, whatever works for you to have your aspiration kind of pinned to the wall, do that thing, because then no matter what your life is like right now, you're thinking, but next year, but 6 years from now when I have my PhD or whatever, you're already living in that world, and that will make it more possible for you. Yeah. And so we've talked about some of this with the grad school application cycle, and some of the things we've talked about are on this list. So we've said create your list of schools. You want to dig in, like I said earlier, to identify the support, the admission deadlines, the fees. That becomes important. Some will waive the fee if you have a financial hardship. You have to reach out for them. There'll be a form. Nobody on the committee will ever know. But if you don't feel like, if you want to apply to 10 schools but don't want to pay $80 per school, and it's and my first $1,000 for grad school went to applying, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll know what their deadlines are. You also want to ask for your letters early. And I tell people who are undergrads, if you are an undergrad right now, or if you're in a master's program right now and you're thinking about a doctoral program, while that person knows you really well, ask for the letter now. I think the biggest mistake that people make is they wait until 2 years after they've had a class with this person, and then the person has to be reminded of the details of how cool that person was. And even if you're an undergrad, strike while the iron is hot, while that person remembers that rock star paper you just wrote, or how you do the most perfect proofs every week, right, Dr. Robley, or whatever. And they're like, wow, you're so careful. I love this. Or, and they're writing little hearts on your math tests. Does that make sense? Ask for I know, the secret about Dr. Robley, just kidding. He doesn't do that. But right then is when you ask for the letter. You say, I know I'm young in my program right now, but I know I'll be applying to grad school in a couple of years. Do you mind right now, while I'm fresh on your mind, would you mind please writing a letter of support for me? And then it will be much easier when it's time. And people so appreciate that, because anybody here who's done this, we all know that death for us is December 10th and 57 requests for letters, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, anything to add to that part?
Well, anybody that you've ever done, like if you've ever done, for example, worked on a project with a professor,
Yeah.
if you've worked on any kind of research project, or there's been any kind of special project, that you had, or for example, like if you're in an honor society, or anything, additional that the professor knows about you, you want to kind of reach out to them, those that know you the best in terms of your classes and your any additional activities that you've done as well. I think that can add extra things for consideration into
Mm.
admission into grad school. I think that those letters are really read by
Yes.
the committee members, and they take them seriously. So
Yeah.
any you want to try to think about things that
Set you apart.
sometimes you may have to that's right, yeah, sometimes you have to remind the professors. Some of them may just know, but some of them you may have to remind, hey, here's some things that I've done, while I'm
Mhm.
here. I'm in this honor society. I did this and that. I was involved in different things. So yeah, anything that, can help you be, stand out. Yep.
Right. So I saw one in the list of names. Hannah, I don't know if you're still on right now, but right now, if Hannah asked me for a letter, there are very specific things I remember about her, and about specific things I remember about a multimedia project she created for my class, actually, because it was so special and took the assignment to such a different place. And that speaks so much to her potential. Does that make sense? If you were working with a professor and you're just doing blah work, even if they're important to the department, don't ask them for a letter, because the letters, as
Right.
Ken said, are read. And if all of your letters are blah, then that means in their mind, you didn't stand out to anybody. And so why should I give you money or even let you in here? But so that you want to ask for the letters, even if it's not in your field, ask for letters from the people who see you as a rock star and will write that rock star letter for you. Um,
Right. Yeah, they could be like, if you do work on campus or anything, it could be like a supervisor or someone you work with that could talk about the work that you've done.
yeah. I say, so the first thing you need to do is make a timeline. And so most schools have deadlines, as we said, that range from October to January. Now that's your end moment. And if the deadline is October 1st, please don't submit your application on October 1st. Please submit it a little early. Just because if you have a technical glitch and it's 10 minutes before the application deadline, then you're toast and everything you asked for. Does that make sense? All of that is for naught. And so make that your end date, but then back up from that and give yourself time to test. And I would say test in the spring because, Ken, I'm neurotic. But so test in the spring so you have a chance to retest. Some of the tests make
Yes.
you wait between attempts.
Mhm.
And some of them are not offered that frequently. Like MCAT for med school is not offered that frequently. And there's a little bit of a delay. They want to make sure that you don't take it every Saturday until you get the score you want. Does that make sense? They make you suffer a little bit. And so look at that. Look at the deadlines and look at the testing requirements and the test dates and take them as early as possible that you're prepared. Ask for letters a couple months before you might need them. Because as I said, at the end, we're all pressured. And so I'm not going to write the most thoughtful letter on December 10th. I'm just not. Well, seriously, because I'll have 27 other requests.
Yep. That's
And I
true.
seriously, and I won't and shrug. I mean, there's no amount of coffee that's going to help me remember how awesome you are and how much I love you.
Yeah.
I just don't have the time. And so ask for the letters earlier in the fall or ideally in the summer or spring. And start working on a general statement of purpose right away. Each program will probably have specific aspects of the purpose that they want to emphasize, but you can start writing a statement of purpose that tells your story and about your passion right away. Don't you think, Ken?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you want to have time to reflect on it, and and think about um, how what you want to do aligns with the university that you're applying to.
Yes,
I,
absolutely. So, in other
I have
words,
that.
here is this. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a question from Evaloni, and she's
Okay.
asking, must letters of recommendation come only from professors or academics, or could they come from
Mhm.
somebody they've worked with professionals, such as a philanthropic situation?
Well, it
Yeah,
depends on your program. Yes. I mean, yeah, you can choose from outside, but it depends on your program. What would you say about that, Ken, and the
yeah,
sciences?
yeah. I would agree with that, and yeah, it's perfectly fine to have someone that's not necessarily tied to you academically, whether it be a professor or somebody That I think sure, I think because it's um, different people can give different sides of you, and and add layers to it, and a lot of it is about a lot of things that graduate school committees want to see is that you they obviously they would want to see you succeed, and see you progress through their program well, and a lot of that may be parts of you, like your work ethic, and your determination, your seeing projects through to completion, and those don't necessarily have to be academic.
Right. And especially if you're, a lot of people who are pursuing PhDs are not like 22 years old, right out of their undergrad. We've already been professionals. We've already been working in the field. We've already proved ourselves to people who are not academics. And so if you're getting a professional PhD, I think it would be really useful to have somebody who's in that professional world with you say, here's what this person is actually like in the field, and here's what they contribute in the field, and here's what their mindset is like, and here is a selection of all their qualities. It's not a character reference, but it's sort of an extra academic statement of who you are, and as Ken said, what you would have to contribute. A demonstration of your seriousness of purpose, right?
That's right. That's a good way to put it. Yep.
So this is the nagging slide. This is me nagging you. Don't put it off. This is my finger wagging slide. Start planning now.
Yep.
And so Willis take you through, and this is just to remind you of what you need to do, because we're trying to now set ourselves up for a Q&A at the end. So this is stuff that we've already said, but we're now slowing it down to say it's all on one slide before, but here's what you do. Create your list of schools first, because that's your starting point. You won't know your deadlines, requirements, anything else until you have your set of schools. Don't just run out and do GRE prep and take your GRE and then decide, or MCAT or whatever it is, and then decide to look at your schools. Your favorite schools might not require any of those things you just spent $200 on. So schools first, and then dig in to identify the kind of support they offer. And we talked about that at length, what their admission requirements are, fees, and deadlines. You might also want to look at other degree requirements, because there's some schools in the social sciences and in the liberal arts that require 1 and sometimes 2 foreign languages, and other schools that offer the same program don't require that. And so if you're multi or polylingual and you're cool with all that, awesome. But if you think, I want to do this thing, but having to know 2 languages kind of, so you need to look at their program requirements as well. I think that's really important. Ask for your letters. And again, you have to do some soul searching and just look back at who are the teachers who really encouraged me? Who are the teachers who inspired me that helped you get to where you are? But the people who inspired you, who never encouraged you, might not be the right people for a letter. You want the people who noticed something sparkly in you, people who noticed your glitter as you walked by with your special brain. That's your letter writer, right?
Yep.
And look, some people ask me for letters and I say no, because either I can't be honestly totally positive and that's not what you want, or I don't know enough about you and I'm not going to fake it because my time is limited. Does that make sense? And so if you have somebody doesn't know you well and they say yes, that's not going to be a strong letter. So, and that's another reason why in any program you're in, you want to start building relationships and being a rock star as early and often, right?
That's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, just do it now. Don't wait. And that's so if you came from a high school in which overachievement was laughed at, as soon as you get to college and it's certainly when you get to grad school, your first time, you just rock star it out of the park all the time, because you want to be the person who's noticed, who's going to, why else are you there? Like, right? It's not a social club. You're there to do the next thing. take any necessary exams. You'll know what's necessary if you go back 2 slides and see what your department and school will require. And then write your letters and essays as required. We can help you with that in the Learning Center, but there are all kinds of books and supports, and we have documents that I can share with Dr. Wallner too, to share with you that will get you started on writing a personal statement, and things to avoid and things to go ahead and write it in that will help you write it in stages so you have a really strong letter. And then reach out directly to the program. Sometimes we're afraid that, you want to have a reason to do it, but you want to have one of their rock stars resonates with you. Please don't reach out and ask general questions that are at the website. Study and scour that website. Don't reach out to the department secretary in graduate studies asking questions that are on the website, because they will remember you for that reason instead of your rock star reasons. And they're just as important as other people, the people who answer the phone and answer those questions. But reach out directly to the rock stars that you want to work with, and be a fangirl or fan guy it all day with them, and tell them you want to work with them.
If you have if you talk to some of the professors in your department, and when you're thinking about the programs that you would want to consider applying to, then they may have connections at those universities as well, or they may they may know someone. They may have even gone to grad school with some of them. And so,
Yeah.
if that's the case, then sometimes you might can if you know your professor well enough, then and they have that connection, then sometimes they can help you. If it can work out, to actually be put in contact with a person to actually maybe meet with them at the university, maybe set up some kind of just kind of saying hi and introducing yourself. That's not totally uncommon either. I know some people that have gone that route, and in fact I've put some people in contact with some professors I know at other colleges as well, to try to get them connected.
Right. And I've seen that happen, well, even just in the spring cycle that we just went through, with some people who were applying to schools. And in one case, I just remember one person who was applying to Auburn, and a professor at Troy was able to get him into a conversation with somebody who might not have responded to him otherwise. And those sorts of things. And that was in the day when you could just go over and be at a coffee shop together. Of course, the world has changed.
Yes.
So,
you guys have a couple questions here, and we have about 5 minutes left in the session, but we could stick around as long as folks still want to stick around. But let me get your questions in the chat box. And one of them is, do you have to, well, let's see. Would you say that people should have work experience before they apply for graduate or doctoral program? There's 3 questions, so that's the first one.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Ken?
I don't think it's necessarily the case that a person be required to have work experience. I had the only jobs that I really had before when I was in college, I was in college and all, and I didn't really, I may have done some tutoring here and there, but I didn't really have like a formal job when I was in college. The only jobs I'd had before then was when I was a teenager working at a grocery store and all. So that's really, I wouldn't say that's necessary.
Sounds
And
good.
I think it also depends on your field. If you're pursuing a strictly academic and theoretical field, then I don't think the work experience is that important. If you're in social work or some of the human services areas, or even business or accounting, then I think that the experience in the field matters more.
Sure.
Very good. Yeah. And Ashley's asking, do you have to complete all of the requirements needed for graduate school if you just want to apply for a master's certificate, I'm assuming a certificate program?
That depends on the school too. I'm finishing up a certificate right now at a school, actually, because, just lifelong learner, whatever, in data science. And so it's, Ken, excuse me, but it's a secret, but I guess not anymore. But, excuse me, but for that, there were almost no requirements. Like I didn't have to submit a GRE or anything like that. I had to demonstrate, I had to write a personal statement. I had to give them my CV or my resume and explain, why, given my lack of coursework or 30 years ago coursework in maths, that this might be an okay thing for me to do. And yeah, basically got in, since it's a certificate and not an actual program. If I wanted to go to the same school and be in their graduate program in data science, I would have to apply with all of the bells and whistles. So, but yeah, look at your school and see your school of choice or schools of choice and see what they require for a certificate application, and they'll make that pretty clear.
Okay.
Certificates are awesome. I mean, and in my case, if you already have multiple or graduate degree or multiple degrees or whatever, you're going to get into your work life and think there's this thing that I already kind of specialize in, but I would really like to know how professionals do it instead of just people who learned from a book how to do it. And that's why I did my certificate. So then when anybody says, well, what do you even know about data science? Why are you doing that project for your department? I can say, oh yeah, I do know something about data science. But it's, yeah, if you're already in there, you're going to, in your professional life, you're going to know what you want to pursue. And certificates, I think, are great because they're only, usually mine was 5 classes long. They're just a handful of classes. You get the special juice that you want. And also you learn whether you want to go, beyond that in a grad program specializing in that, not just a certificate.
All right, you also had a question from Alexandria. It says, is it a good idea to apply to a doctoral program with no research experience?
What do you think, Ken?
Well, I mean, I can speak for the mathematics side of it, and that wasn't the case when I was going through, and I don't think it's the case as 100% now either. I think that I had the only anything close to research experience that I had when I was going into my PhD program was I'd gone through a master's degree first, but that wasn't research in the strict sense of publishing or anything. But so I I think it's I think though that I have heard some students now, at least in mathematics and maybe other areas too. I know in physics as well, they are looking for research opportunities, and maybe some schools are requiring that a little bit. Or I don't know if the word's requiring. Maybe in fact that's not the right word, but they're
There's an expectation.
yeah, there's some sort of expectation now, a little bit more, and especially some programs that than there used to be, where they're from the students I get that want letters of recommendation. A lot of times, even before they ask for that, they'll want to work either with me or some other professor on a research project, which I'm happy to do and all. But they're wanting it for the opportunity to learn and to actually do and have the experience of doing research. But they also are thinking in advance too, that some of the schools that they're applying to might want them, might give them a competitive edge to if they have done something.
Right. And also, if you're in STEM field, you should, and this gets to, I think, is it Melissa in Enterprise? Any opportunity you have to be part of a hackathon or a mathathon is going to be really, really important. And don't think, well, I can't do a hackathon because I'm not a CS person. Well, there's more to a hackathon than being a CS person. It's really design trials. And excuse me. And so you're always going to be working in a team trying to figure out solutions to problems. And so what they're really looking for, I think, more than research is that sort of spirit of inquiry. And that I'm always looking for a problem to solve because I love solving problems. I'm always wanting to take the lid off the box constantly. Likewise, if you're in business, they're always, maybe not in this area, but I'm sure in the Atlanta area, more their startup boot camp weekends and things like that you can attend, where you basically have to kind of imagine a business idea and how you would bootstrap it over the weekend, so that if you're an actual entrepreneur, then you would have sort of a startup idea ready to go to business plan by the end of the weekend. But if you're just somebody who maybe wants to try out what it would be like to go through an MBA program, or you want to get that experience or be able to say, yeah, I have this idea for a business, et cetera, that will help you have that extra thing under the belt that looks like you've done something that's spirit of inquiry related and research related.
I think that's exactly right. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a pure research type thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think that whole spirit of inquiry captures what they're looking for. You
Yep.
know, sometimes it can be something like, like a hackathon, like you mentioned, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can be something like going to a professional conference.
Yep.
Even just attending. Find whatever area you're in. Um, you know, um, find a conference, and you can usually find that through a professor. Like ask
Mm-hmm.
one of your professors, hey, what's a reasonable conference I could go to in this area that wouldn't, break the bank or anything on that.
Yep.
And but yet it would still give me the opportunity to connect with people with, similar interest and all. And it would show to any committee, any graduate, committee that you're applying to, that you are showing initiative, and you do have that spirit of inquiry and all, and you want to grow and learn in your area too. I think was a really good point you made
Yeah.
on that. So, yeah.
Join your professional organization. There's typically one major professional organization in your field. Join it, get on the listservs and all the mailing lists for it, and you're going to have so many professional development opportunities that are going to come your way that you feel that you're not ready for, but do them anyway, because
Yeah.
you're going to start networking and connecting with people, and that's going to give you some of what you need as well. And some of these people, again, once you get connected with them and then you connect with them on LinkedIn, you're going to see, oh, they have an MBA from the school that you want to attend, or, whatever else. I know that NCTM, which is the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, has, their fall conference was canceled, but all the people that they accepted, they've started doing, I guess a couple months ago, well, I shouldn't say I guess because I've been to almost all of them. I'm going to one tonight, but excuse me. But they've allowed those people to do their sessions at 6 o'clock at night, like 4 nights a week. And so they've had 100 days of mathematics. And you get professional development credit every time you go to one of those. They give you a certificate, Ken. It's amazing. So join your professional organization. There's going to be something wild like that is just free and beautiful and professionally helpful for you. It'll also give you a sense of whether that's the program or that's the field you want to go into once you start, associating with the people who are already doing the thing you want to do.
Yep.
You got a question from Melissa that says,
Yep.
what about applying to international schools? She's been
Yeah.
told that more schools in Europe provide full rides, but it's tougher to get into those schools.
Right. One of our tutors, who was a biomedical sciences major, was actually accepted to University of Helsinki. And excuse me. And so, right, what she's trying to do right now is sort out how she's going to get to Europe when they won't accept Americans right now. But so then there's that right now. But yeah, it's applying to an American school is very different from applying to European schools. She was only applying to European schools, and so I went through all of her processes with her. All of her Zoom calls were like at, their time, their morning time, but it was like for, or their afternoon time. And so I would actually take her on campus and unlock the learning center for her, Ken, at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been like 3 different times, 3 o'clock in the morning in the learning center, picked her up from our apartment, took her there because she didn't want to wake up her roommates on a Skype call in the middle of the morning like that. So you have to adjust to their time zone. But yeah, for them, it's really interesting because they want to know in detail basically what your research project will be about. Because when they fully fund a graduate student at a European school, one of my friends from grad school at Georgia is a professor in Sweden and is now a naturalized citizen there, et cetera, after many years. But at her school, they want you to, or another friend teaches at University of Bergen in Norway. And I know that for their programs, it's fully funded. Like they give you like a doctoral program at Bergen, they give you basically 50,000 US and pay for everything because you are living there as a professional. You're teaching and doing research, and that's all you're doing. You're not necessarily taking a lot of classes. You're doing guided research under the person that you're there to work with. And you're part of a community of scholars, but you propose the project you want to work on, and they're basically judging you based on your letters and your project proposal. And they don't care about GRE at all. Because for them, if you're bright enough to write a project proposal that seems amazing and mind-blowing to them, that's the thing they're looking for. And that's where you really need the rock star letters too, to say, this person has such a mind for doing this kind of work, and they're like they're the only person who could do the kind of project they would propose for you. But yeah, we've had some success getting people into European schools, but yet this one young woman is going over there, and yeah, it's gonna, and she's a biology person. I mean, she did biomedical sciences, but she's studying, will be studying a subset of botany over there. So it's going to be kind of cool, but has a full ride. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's very different. You'll have to do two different kinds of preparation if you're applying to American and Canadian schools versus a European school.
All right, and another question from Shay says, what makes a great personal statement?
Mm. I think it has to be an evidence-based expression of your aspiration. And a lot of people think a personal statement, a lot of people Oprahize it. We have such a confessional culture that a lot of people, I read so many personal statements that are so confessional. And if you want to pick a significant moment in your life at which everything changed and focused you on this path, many people take what the society would say is your tragic turning point. And that's not what schools are looking for. I think the best statements I've ever read are statements that let people know who you are and what your orientation is, like, you know, where I came from, but that's only like a seed for the tree, right? And so they really want to know what your evidence-based aspiration is. It's not like I've always wanted to be a billionaire, but it's like I've been saving money and investing money since I was 14. You know what I mean? All of these things. They want to see the way the path has been built. Like, here's what I want to do, and here's how I've already been crunching away on it. And if you would just let me in this last door, then all of these other things will be possible. Because you have to think, a great personal statement is, it's about you, but it's also about them. They're reading it because they're thinking about their greater enduring glory all the time. And so it's about you and what you can achieve, but it's, are you the kind of person who can finish? Are you the kind of person who can do well? Are you the kind of person who's probably going to zoom past and be a rock star? Because those are the people we want to claim on our graduates page. Does that make sense? And so when they're reading the personal statement, they don't want to see you just looking back. They want to see enough of that they see, where did you start from? What was your point of origin? But now what can you do, and how have you proved that you're already on the path to trying to do that?
Yeah, that's good. Yep.
I've just seen that 15 million times. I'm sorry, just read 15. It feels like 15 million.
And speaking of rock stars, I would like to take a moment and thank our two amazing rock star presenters today, because I think they knocked it out of the ballpark. What do y'all think? Put your answers in the chat box and take a minute to fill out the survey link that Dr. Velarde sent. Ken, Trish, you've done something wonderful today. We came and told folks we're going to help them achieve their dreams, and I think you gave them precisely the tools that they need to do that. So Ken, Trish, thank you very much for coming today. That was an amazing session.
Thank you.
And we thank y'all for coming.
Much.
And now we're going to stop the recording in a moment, and we're going to start kind of the social hour. It'll probably be a social few minutes today.
I'm sorry.
comes every time. No, this was perfect because I think people had a
Yeah.
lot of questions. But thank you everybody for coming, and please feel free to stick around for our virtual coffee social hour, which we've started since the start of COVID in February or March. We keep it going every week just to say hello to
Oh, wow.
folks. And she brought her water. Very good. And
Oh,
we'll
wow.
do it again next week. So next week is going to be career chats with Emily from Troy Career Services, and she is the expert, man. She can tell you about mock interviews, about how to access Troy Career Services online without ever leaving your house, how they can review your resume, and any other questions you have for Emily. So let's think of some good ones for her for next week. And thank you all for coming. It was so nice to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Trish.
Thank
Great
you very
job.
much. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Stop the recording
Bye-bye.
now.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. I have to go meet with my boss, so. I know, he's probably thinking, where is she? Sorry. But thanks you. This has been wonderful. And anybody, if you